So this is me. I do product management consulting, coaching, and training. I have shipped products at some really big software companies. So I consider myself an enterprise B2B guy. And that is indeed most of my clientele. On the consulting and training side, coaching is all over the place. I coach people aspiring to be PMs, CPOs, senior product managers, all kinds of folks. And a lot of what you're going to hear today came out of conversations with Peter. We met, he's a senior UX guy. He wasn't able to make it today, but this is definitely our joint thinking, and it's still in development. So I don't know how definitive this stuff is, but I wanted to share our thinking. So I have always felt like I didn't get the most out of UX as I could in my career. My wife is a director of UX for a company in Germany. I hear her war stories and I just see this lack of alignment. So there were several issues that we saw specifically between PM and UX. One that I think is growing is this conflict around charter, who does what. I'm seeing, for example, UX people call themselves product design and tell PM, yeah, we don't need you to talk to users. We don't need you to do that. And that's interesting because it can cause conflict. I see product people engaging with UX folks way too late. So oversimplified, there's this mentality that we will build something, UX will sweep in and make it look good, which is, a nightmare. Not the way we should be thinking about it at all. This isn't UI design. This is about understanding the user experience. I'm not going to go into it, but I think product managers do design as well. They describe what they want to be built, and these things influence each other. Understanding what the end user needs influences the design of the product and vice versa. Here, language, I'm not talking about, English and the German that I don't speak. I think UX and PM people really approach things differently, use different terminology. And I think that means we talk past each other a lot. And more specifically, I think it means sometimes UX has difficulty communicating the business value of what they want to do. And then what I'll address today is this idea of strategic alignment. Let's say, some percentage of organizations, I think it's still small, come to an operational balance where UX and PM and the rest of the team work well together. I still think that's the exception, unfortunately. But where I see a big lack of alignment is around strategy. And I even see a lack of awareness of strategy as a topic in UX. Not universally, but in general. If I go to most senior UX people and I say, what is the UX strategy? I'm not sure in most cases I would get a great answer. So there is a poll. Maybe you can put it on the stage or whatever it is, Rolf. Whoa, that was interesting. There's a poll on whether these pains resonate or not. I'm curious about that. And this thing is out of control. I've never used this software. So before we get too much further, I want to level set just a bit. Even in product management circles, there's some ambiguity about what the role is. I'll tell you in broad strokes what I think it is. So the way I position product management depends on whom I'm speaking to. If I'm speaking to an executive, I'll say, you have a corporate strategy, right? They will always say yes. Very often it's not the case. They will say yes. I will say, who is executing that strategy at the product level? That's your PM. We can also think of it as somebody who, especially in tech, is really focused on maximizing the business value of what we do. As technicians, we can sometimes pursue what's cool, what we want to do, at the expense of doing what the market expects. We advocate for the functional perspective. We should understand the product outside in like the market does. We also tend to know a fair amount about the implementation, but we're there to champion this market or customer-centric view. And a good PM is orchestrating the efforts of a lot of other stakeholders, including UX, pulling people in, making sure there's communication. UX can do great designs, have deep insight into the user experience. If engineering doesn't get it, they will mess it up when they implement it. And one way to think about PM is that, we get the right product on the shelf. And I think this is a really powerful analogy. Here is my definition, by the way. It is a mouthful. I can make these slides available, but basically the PM is the member of the product team who's accountable for overall success of the product and make sure the right thing gets built for the right segments at a cost that will meet, business success. And PMs have a big role in defining business success. They should. And that's going to be something we talk about a lot in this presentation. If you want to explain what a product manager does to your mom, I think one of the best analogies is the celebrity chef. So this is Gordon Ramsay. He's Scottish. He has high-end restaurants around the world. But if you go to his steak joint in Vegas, you should not expect him to be in the back cutting carrots and peeling potatoes. He is not going to greet you at the door. He's not going to serve you your food. He did not go in and hang the pictures and paint the walls. He had a vision for what he wanted. He had a hypothesis about what the market would value. And then he worked with a team to pull that together. That's what a good PM does. They have that type of ownership. If you go to his restaurant and it sucks, you're not going to go to your friends and talk bad about the chef or the waiter. You're going to talk bad about Gordon Ramsay. So imperfect, certainly, but a pretty powerful analogy for people who have no idea what a PM does. Back to this shelf analogy. The truth is, if you look at a mature product organization, doesn't matter whether it's tech, you will find that as it matures, there's a set of people accountable for getting the product on the shelf and another set of people who get it off the shelf. And by the way, one of the biggest dysfunctions in product orgs that I see is these folks don't talk to each other enough. And here is the way it breaks down. You can see that PM, engineering, Q, marketing, and of course UX are primarily responsible for getting the right thing on the shelf. There are other folks who are accountable for getting it off the shelf, like sales, customer success. They're more about getting a ready product into the hands of customers so that they can use it productively. Marketing has a special role. They should be helping us understand the market opportunity on the shelf side. And then, of course, they should be creating demand on off the shelf. So simplified model, but I found it powerful. And you can see that PM and UX should be very strong allies. UX helps me get something on the market that is actually desirable, that people want to use. I started my career as an engineer. I built a lot of UIs, and I still pity the people who had to use them. I had no idea what I was doing. I have no sensibility. The UIs that I like, 99% of people will, hate. Maybe that's why I have such a special place in my heart for UX. For this crowd, I don't think I have to go into a lot of detail. I really like this definition that I found. It's about understanding and designing experience. What is the optimal experience? Given a task, given a goal that I want to achieve as a user, what's the best experience for me? And this one is product-centric, which of course I love. I looked up, it seems like this grows all the time. What are the areas in UX? A little feedback to everybody, that's in UX. This is overwhelming to most product managers, trying to keep up with what this really means. And this is maybe a little artificial, like this HCI thing, I don't know that that's parallel with the rest. But anyway, UX is really broad. And I tell PMs all the time, a big part of your job is educating people about what you do, the value you add. Just, I don't know who needs to hear that or what you do with it, but a lot of your stakeholders need an understanding of what do these things mean, who maps to these different activities and roles, which ones do you cover, which ones do you not have the bandwidth to cover, what is the value? We look at this list and I'm like, goodness. I get the design part and the research part. I get testing. And some of the other ones resonate a bit, but this is overwhelming to us when we think about what UX is. Now let's get into this idea of strategic engagement. My hypothesis is, or my contention is, if we want to have the most impact, PM and UX together, we need to be aligned strategically. So let's define what a strategy is. And I have a pretty simple definition that I took from something called the business motivation model. A strategy is a course of action that takes us towards success. Could be a company, a department, a person. In my coaching, I help people, define career strategies all the time. It implies that you define success. You cannot have a meaningful strategy if you don't have a good definition of success. This course of action will take you anywhere. And strategy has to be tied to operations, to execution, if it's going to be meaningful. And way too often at all levels, we define a strategy and then forget about it. Checkbox, we defined our strategy. There are a bunch of levels of strategy, and I can define they are significantly different. They can be at these different levels. They should all be aligned. I am not an independent product business. I never was in my career. I worked for these huge companies. So I needed to understand what my business unit was trying to achieve, how that contributed to the company. And then, at the product level, there are a bunch of different strategies, and that's what we'll talk about today. At the product level, that tells me how my product is going to help, move the company forward, how it's going to help the company be successful. And we can think of it as a network of strategies. There's a core product strategy, there's a marketing strategy, sales, and of course there should be a UX strategy, I would submit. There should be a definition for UX success and a course of action to take us there. And as a product person, this is how I think about it. This is how the rubber hits the road. I define success, I socialize that, get everybody to agree. I then define a strategy which tells me how I plan to achieve that success, the things I will and will not do to be successful. Then I can create a roadmap. I can talk about how I'm going to deliver value to the market. But that should be largely strategic. I should be doing things that are executing the strategy that are going to make me successful. Not things that are going to defocus me. Not things that are going to allow me to tread water, things that are going to make me successful. So if I think of UX strategy, Peter and I think about that existing on two levels. And in the Q&A, I would love to hear what you think about this. So I definitely think there's an org level flavor. So across the portfolio, how do I measure success? Could be something with like NPS. I know some people hate that metric. Doesn't matter. Pick another one. But the company is trying to do something like increase conversion or increase margin or do whatever. And the UX strategy at the org level should tell me how UX is supporting those things. That's the accountability of like UX leadership. It's one of the things they should be doing. You should be able to go in front of executives and make it very clear how you're helping them be successful. And then there's UX at the product level. So each product should have a strategy. Here, I think of UX as really just kind of like a branch or a part of the product strategy. But for my product, what does UX success look like and how do I plan to achieve it? What am I going to do? This may seem really abstract, so I'm going to show you some definitions. This is like the overall model. It's a lot to take in, but we all want to be successful, so I need to define ends. So I have goals, which are general things, and objectives, which are time-bound and measurable. You can map these to KPIs and other things, but this describes what I want to achieve. On the mean side, I have a strategy with tactics. It's about doing. I have an opinion about what will make me successful. The strategy tells me how I'm going to go about that. So I'll do this in the context of a case study. There are just a couple of slides, but imagine like a surveillance solution. I go into a city, I hang a bunch of cameras, I have gunshot detectors, I have audio detectors, I have radar, all kinds of stuff. And I build a picture of what's going on, and I can automatically detect when there's a big fire or when a group is forming in a place that it shouldn't or whatever. And I can use this same set of capabilities to protect a city, to protect a port, to protect military installations. Same basic mission, different configurable pieces. Some of those are software, like there's a command and control center that is software that raises these events and lets people respond to them. So fairly complex solution, but let's think about where the concepts I've talked about would fit in this type of thing. So at the company level, we may be thinking we have got to reduce total cost of ownership. It's killing us. People are, installing this, and then we're getting a lot of grief from our customers because they have to hire so many people to run it or whatever it is. So at the corporate level, we have a goal that we want to reduce staffing requirements, admin staffing requirements by 50%. How are we going to do that? Well, there are a lot of things we're probably going to do. But one of the things has clear UX, the example that I'm giving here, UX implications. We need to look at the most time-intensive admin tasks and reduce them by 50%. That is not about making a screen prettier. It's about understanding what admins are trying to achieve, looking at their workflow, looking at what's available to them, and making that whole experience better. We might, as a company, let's say we're mid-sized, we want to be seen as a thought leader. We're competing against these huge dinosaurs. We want people to think of us. What is the UX part of that? Well, we want some design awards. We want to be able to tell the market that we really have the best UX and we're investing in it and we're progressive. Very simple examples. But it shows that at the org level there, I know what I want to achieve as an organization. UX leaders should be thinking about specifically how am I going to contribute to that. If we think at the product level, for this urban surveillance solution, I may want to increase mobile usage, use of the mobile app by 30%. How is UX going to help me do that? And there may be a lot of things I need to do. What are the UX-centric things? I'm going to make onboarding a lot easier. If people can actually get the app and get productive on it fast, that helps me with usage. And I want a positive NPS score. Bar is kind of low. I want at least 100 data points, and I want the NPS score to be positive for the mobile app. Another product goal that I have is to reduce support costs. I'm getting killed. And what we want to do is reduce usability-related support ticket volume. So people are trying to do a task, they can't figure it out, they call support. I want to reduce those calls by 30% by the end of next year. I may have a corresponding objective to take it down another 20% by the end of the next year. But the idea is there are branches or there are parts of this definition of success for the product that are very UI specific. I'm sure you can think of things. I'll show you a few more metrics in a moment. And that's what the UX strategy is at the product level. I should write them down. I should mark them up. And the UX person supporting the team or the UX team should be able to point to these things and measure their performance. So how do I now define a strategy? I have a definition of success. Well, define success by picking the right metrics. Define just a couple of goals, maybe 3 goals with 2 objectives each, 2 goals, whatever. You don't have to boil the ocean. Align those things with the product and org strategy, and then over time, elaborate them. Write out a strategy for UX at the product level, at the org level. It's really, really, really hard the first time you do it. I can tell you from experience, it's one of the hardest things you will do is actually write down what your strategy is. But that's basically what you do. It's like everything else. We do this, iteratively, incrementally. We learn how to do it. We learn how to manage to it. Here are some kind of categories of typical UX metrics. I don't think any of these, should be a big surprise to anyone. We want to increase usability, engagement. So what's the session duration? What's the click-through rate? Which features are being used? If I launch a new feature, is anybody using it? Let's say I automate some admin tasks. And then so an admin can just click a button and do something that used to take them 5 minutes in 5 seconds. How often is that getting used? How successful is it? I want to know something about satisfaction. We talked about NPS before. So just a little subset to get the gears moving. Think about what the most important metrics are for you. Those will probably be influenced by what the most important metrics for the product and the organization are. Come up with a goal, come up with a couple of objectives, time-bound and measurable things, and off you go. Start managing to it. Adjust it as you need to. Evolve it over time. Once you have a definition of success, I like to create an elevator pitch. This is what I was talking about. I have worked with, UX people, with PM people. This is nearly impossible the first time you do it. It is so hard. It's like a paradigm thing. And then something flips and you're able to do it pretty easily. But you can see here, they're saying we're going to really try to reduce total cost of ownership. That's what's primary. And to keep it competitive, we want a great mobile experience. So, maybe I could have said that we will be mobile first. And yeah, blah, 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 blah. We also want to be recognized. So one of the ways that we are going to help Eagle Eyes be competitive, you could infer from this, maybe I should have made it explicit. We're going to have just an awesome mobile experience. Maybe we talk to the product people and leadership and say, hey, you know what? Let's really invest in that. I want us to be known as the surveillance solution that you can manage from anywhere. So a lot of ground covered. I wanted to, this is almost a tangent, but I wanted to cover this communication topic because even to get strategic, PM and UX need to understand each other better. And I see personally, a fair number of issues. So, the PM is worried about the overall product success. UX, of course, cares about that, but their focus, where their effort goes into, is in the experience. PMs are thinking about very broad business metrics, margin, revenue, conversion. And UX is probably more focused on a subset of those things. They very indirectly affect like revenue and those kinds of things. But if UX people don't understand that that's what product managers care about, it's going to be hard to influence them. And I've had that in my career. I've had UX people come to me and say, I need 60% of engineering capacity to redo the UI in the next release. Right? Very immature organization. And that's crazy talk. It's like, yeah, we can do that. And then that'll be the last thing we do because we will fail in the market, right? So we have to understand what motivates each other. And yeah, to a PM, my planning horizon is as long as my roadmap. It's probably a couple turns of the crank. And I think very often, because historically it hasn't been necessarily as strategic as it could have been, UX is really thinking about the next release. That's probably a little unfair. I know some of you have a much broader perspective. So this is imperfect, but the idea is if we want to communicate, we have to understand each other, and understanding what's important to each other will help us communicate better. And I guess the upshot to UX people is if you want to influence PM, speak their language and express value in a way that, is meaningful to them. How are you going to help them with overall product success? Just a note that Peter and I are working on a workshop. We'd like to give it later in the year where we get PM and UX teams to come together and we talk about this engagement model. We flesh out strategies. We basically just get this strategic level conversation started. So if you're interested, hook up with me on LinkedIn. I don't know if we'll get it done this year, but I really love the idea of getting these folks together in the same room, having them talk about what they like, what they don't like, and how they can be more effective together. Really appreciate your time. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Greg Prickril there as far as I know. I manage my coaching at coachpms.com. My consulting work is more represented on prickril.com. You're welcome to take a look at either one of those.